Hey everybody, this is B from Talk Tech, and today I'm going to be doing a little bit of a different video. I'm going to be bringing you along to do some troubleshooting on an issue that I was having on my home server. So one of the things that I have not really communicated clearly recently is that I actually switched from my Rocky Linux home server to a Debian-based home server. So, and anytime that you're switching from, different flavors of Linux, there's gonna be things that are different. There's gonna be a learning curve. So always remember that. And that's why I try to use these fairly regularly so that I can kind of keep myself familiar with the different things and nuances that are different between the different flavors of Linux. And really, your big three flavors are going to be Debian, Arch, and Red Hat. Those are your three big ones, and pretty much most other distributions are going to be some derivative of those. There are other exceptions, but we're not going to get into that. So, but yeah, let me go ahead and break down the issue that I was having. So, as many of you know that have been watching my videos, is that I do a lot of virtualization content, and I use virtual machines that are on a centralized server in my apartment to make it easier for me to be able to go ahead and to be able to access the same machine consistently across any machine that I'm using in my apartment. I don't have as many machines as I used to, but still I like doing that because I don't have to put as much wear and tear and have as powerful of a laptop as I would need to be able to host all of this locally, and then that comes with tons of extra heat and a bunch of other things. So I have that centralized server. Now, if you've kept up with my Linux virtualization series, there was a point in time where I did a video on connecting your virtual machine to your LAN, to your local area network or your home network. And in that video, what we did is we created a bridge. And I still have a bridge set up on my home server because I want to be able to go ahead and have those directly on my network because it makes a lot of the stuff that I do easier. Now, everybody's going to have their own different use cases, but that's what works best for me. So let me go ahead and actually show you this interface. We're going to do we're going to do IP address, and then we're going to just do BR0, so I can only see that one. Whoops. Oh, you know what? I forget. We're going to show BR0. There we go. All right, so we only want to show it for BR0, and BR0 is what I called it. It's going to vary depending on how you set up your bridge, but we can see here that this is how it is currently set up. And let's see here. Let me show you something else. Actually, I'm just going to go ahead and do an IP address, just regular this time. And let's go ahead and look at ENP2S0, because that's the actual default Ethernet interface that I'm working on for this particular system. And we can see here that it is. We can see here that it is up, but it has a master. I'm sorry. It is. Its master has a BR0 has a state of up. So we can see here that this one is actually a slave interface to a master, which is going to be BR0, which is this one right here, and that is our bridge that's going to allow us to connect out to the local area network and be able to get an IP address and all that crazy stuff. Now, the issue that I was having is that every time I would reboot my home server, because I don't have it running all the time, is it would take like 2 or 3 minutes to actually connect I shouldn't say connect, but it would take 2 or 3 minutes for it to actually to come up and have its IP address and be ready to go. I was like, okay, well, I'm not having this issue when I don't have the bridge interface up. So I was like, well, what gives? And this is where me wanting to make this video came into place, because I wasn't really sure what it was, and I wasn't sure if it was something with Debian. I wasn't sure if it was something with the interface, my home network. I doubted it was anything with the home network, because literally everything else on the network is functioning fine. So I was like, I'm going to push that one to the very, very end just to make sure, especially because I'm running a pretty simple home network configuration here, so it's nothing too crazy. But let me show you what I did. Is I and I did and I do like I would tell anybody else, and this is one of the first questions that I'll ask a lot of people when they ask me for assistance is, hey, did you Google it? And sometimes it's yes, sometimes it's no. It really just depends. And I will say that Googling is an art. is it takes a while. And honestly, like that's what a lot of IT work is it's going to be learning how to ask a question to Google and now Chat GPT to get the answer that you're looking for. And over time, the more you do this, the better that you'll get at it. You'll know what kind of questions to ask. And honestly, if you're not sure where to start, just ask. Literally put the thought that comes in your head. I'm sure somebody has kind of done some derivative of that and it may pick up on it. And then just keep refining it and keep practicing. And that's what I did here. So let me show you. So I did two things. So the very first search that I did was this one right here. I literally typed in delay in bridge coming up after rebooting Linux. Because you want to make sure you specify which operating system, because that is going to be different for Mac. Mac is pretty similar to Linux, but there's still differences there. And the same thing with Windows. Windows is not Linux, so it's going to do networking and things differently. So what works on one operating system may not work on the other operating system. So that's why we want to try to be specific here. And honestly, the very first thing that came up is it said network startup delay, networking a server, and I'm like, okay, well it's the Arch forums and Arch repositories. Sorry, the Arch, not the Arch repositories, but the Arch forums and the Arch wiki are really good resources to be able to go ahead and understand things. So if you ever see something from Arch, most of that stuff is still going to apply to the other Linux distributions. Now, sometimes every once in a while there's a little difference, but deal with that when you get to it. But most of the time, same thing with using a Red Hat. Documentation is it's really, really useful to be able to go ahead and find your way around whatever your problem is. And somebody was having something similar, and it says, I have quite an annoying issue with my network configuration, and I ran out of ideas how to fix it. It's a desktop PC with a wired network adapter. When I boot, I find myself in the login screen of the display manager. I can type in my password, continue logging in. Anyways, it seems like the moment entering the display manager, I have to wait 20 seconds until my network comes up. I would like to fix this, which is, mine is taking 2 to 3 minutes. So mine is a little bit different. He did specify in here that he's using Network Manager via System D for the network adapter. Furthermore, I have a bridge configured to use the network also for my VMs, which is pretty much the same situation that I'm having here. He's just, this is from 2016, and just because something's old does not mean that it's still not relevant, and this checks all the boxes for what I'm looking for, because that's exactly what I'm running here. I can actually show you. Let me just clear this out. System CTL status network manager. And we can see that that's exactly what I'm running here. One of the things that I did when I installed this server is it did not actually run on Network Manager by default, so I had to go ahead and update that. So I actually had the default networking, and then I went eventually and installed Network Manager. So one of the things that I was suspecting at first is that there was some kind of conflict between the default networking on Debian versus Network Manager. So one of the first things that I tried to do here was, even before going and doing that search I was like, and this is one of the things that you should probably start with is always do a restart of the service. So sudo, you would do system ctl restart, and then you would do, in this particular case, we're going to do network manager. All right, and it's going to be fine because I'm logged in and it's not going to log me out or anything like that. But that's going to go ahead and reset all your connection. I'm sorry, not going to reset all your connections, but it's going to reset the service to maybe work in any maybe small little kinks that may be kind of there and stuff like that. It's the same thing like if you call your company's IT department, a lot of them are going to be like, hey, did you restart? Or the first thing they'll tell you is, hey, can you please restart your computer? And that's essentially what we're doing here is we're doing it for, the only difference is we're doing it for an individual service versus doing it for the entire system. So we want to try to flush out any bad juju that's in there and get things up and running. Now, one of the other things that I did still have running is I still have the original networking running. So let me actually show you something here. We're going to do system CTL, and we're going to do status, and we're going to do networking. And we can see here that now it is disabled. But when I first kind of set up Network Manager, I never disabled this, and that's something that you should do, because you, as a best practice security, for securities you wanna disable unused services. In this particular case, that's what I wanted to do. It also helps. To make sure that you don't have any conflicts. So I started here, and I was like, okay, well, this is not the problem, because after this, it still happened. Now, one of the other things that I tried as well is I looked at the DNS server configuration, because I was like, well, maybe there's some kind of DNS issue, because the DNS is where you're going to get your IP address from. It's going to be like, it's how it, when a computer comes online, it's usually it's probably going to have it already, but if it's the first time it's coming online, it's going to have to reach out to that. It's like being born again. It's like, hey, you gotta get a name so we can put on your birth certificate. And that's exactly what's happening every time that a computer is new and it connects to a network for the first time. It's going to reach out for DNS information. It's going to see like, yo, dude, I need a name. Not necessarily a name, but I need an IP address which is going to identify me, which is like a name. And that's different. There's also host names, and we're not going to get into the difference between host names, IP addresses. But if that's something that you want me to cover in the future, let me know down below. That's definitely something that I'd be happy to go ahead and cover if there's enough interest. But one of the other things that like I said, is I was curious, because network manager is going to be a lot of it's going to be managed. It's going to work alongside systemd. To be able to go ahead and set up and manage your networking connections. Now, one of the things that you'll see on most implementations of Network Manager, is you'll see also let me see what it's called here. Give me just a second here. Is you'll see a service called systemd resolved, it's basically like DNS being managed by by systemd. And I was like, I wonder if maybe that's causing some kind of issue. Maybe because I was using the a statically set DNS server versus having an automated one that's works better with Network Manager and systemd. Maybe that's a difference. Well, so what I did is I went ahead and installed that, and that was not the issue. And if you're ever curious where you can get DNS information, I've done a video about this in the past. Is you do cat Etsy, and then you'll do resolve.conf, and we can see here it says denied resolve conf file, general resolver generated conf. Do not edit this file by hand. Your changes will be overwritten. And it says right here 127.53 is the systemd resolve subresolver. But yeah, see here you can see all this stuff. This is how you'll know that it's run by systemd resolve. It's going to look like this. If not, then it would just have the name server there, and mine still has it there, which is fine. I did not change that, but it still works. It still works just fine the way that it is. But it is now being managed through that, and it did not fix my problem. I still had the same problem because it wasn't a DNS issue. So don't see this as a finished configuration, because I still need to go back and fix that. That's something I do plan on covering in the future at some point in time. I want to do, cover Network Manager in more detail. And to me, I see systemd resolve as kind of an extension of Network Manager, because they really go hand in hand. So we'll cover a lot more of that once we get to that point. So yeah, that wasn't the issue. So let's go ahead and go back to our searches. So okay, cool. So one of the very first responses, though, it says out of curiosity. Wait, hold on, not that one. Oh yeah, so we don't care about that one. That one's not helpful. But if you come down here to this one right here by this good person, it says this delay is caused by spanning tree protocol, which is enabled by default to detect and resolve loops in bridge networks. Since your bridge is just for VMs, there are unlikely to be loops, and you can safely turn this off, and it gives you a command to do that. Well, we're managing ours through Network Manager, so that command right there is not going to be able to take care of what we want. I did not manually set it up that way, but we can do this through Network Manager. Now, spanning tree is basically it's a networking protocol that it's used on like switches, bridges, and stuff like that to make sure that loops aren't going to form. Because what you don't want to happen, like if you were to connect like just two switches, together, and say if you sent a ping from one to the other, it would just loop indefinitely, because it's like, hey, like, until like there's a time to live or anything like that. But it's to help prevent that from happening, is you don't want traffic just looping around the network continuously, because that's going to clog it up and it's going to bring it down and all that stuff. So here I was able to go ahead and get a lead. I was like, oh, spanning tree protocol. I actually have a Cisco CCNA, so I was very familiar with spanning tree protocol, and it's not something that I thought of because I don't work with bridge devices very often, and and I should have I should have thought that about that. But hey, that's what Google is for. And one of the things you'll notice here is that I'm using Start Page versus Google. Start Page is kind of it's basically just like a search engine that allows you to anonymously do Google searches, which is pretty cool. So that's why you're seeing me use that versus Google. Same search. If you were to do the same thing, you get the same results. Just less of their stuff. So pretty cool. So I did another search as well after that. I was like, okay, well, disable spanning tree network manager, because this may be shocking, but I don't know everything. I don't have everything memorized, and I don't run into this problem every single day. So this is going to be something that I'm going to have to Google. And that's what I did. And look what I found. Is I found something in Fedora. Fedora of all places. And you're like, well, Fedora is, Red Hat based. Well, the thing is it's still using Network Manager. And Network Manager works the same pretty much regardless of the distribution. Yeah, no, there may be, nuances depending on which version you're using and all that stuff. But honestly, that's the thing, is a lot of these services, like the basic functionality of them doesn't change over long periods of time. So a lot of times you can apply that to the most recent version of whatever thing you're working with. So, and it tells us right here. It gives us it shows us how to see the here it's like, hey, that added this bridge, and then this right here is actually they're getting details about that bridge, which I can show you guys that here in just a second. And then it gives us a command here to go ahead and to either disable or enable it. And it basically all this is 802.1d is it's a spanning tree protocol. It's one of the open source ones. I forget which ones are which, but there's quite a few different ones, and that's one of the basic ones. Not one of the basic ones, but it's I shouldn't say a basic one. It's an open source one. Because once you start talking about different vendors, they have different protocols, proprietary protocols, and things like that. But yeah, so that's what we're looking for here. So we're looking how to do that. Now, let's go ahead and go back to this. Let's go ahead and go back to our system here, our Linux system. Now, one of the other things that I did is I went ahead and I did a dmessage. I'm going to run sudo dmessage. And what this does, it allows us to see the kernel ring buffer, which is basically a log file for the kernel since boot. So I looked in here, and this is kind of where I was like, I wish I would have been paying closer attention and thought about this, because you're going to see something interesting here. Let's do grep, and let's do BR0. All right, perfect. So here we go. I'm gonna go ahead and just switch off my webcam here for just a second. All right, so we can see some interesting stuff here. So we can see all of this right here has to do with BR0. Now, look at this right here. It says BR0 topology change detected, sending TCN BPDU. And BPDU is how it's basically it's a communication device that's used by spanning tree protocol to be able to go ahead. And I think it's Bridge Protocol Data Unit is what I think it stands for. It's basically used to communicate throughout the network to be like, yo, dude, like I need to make sure that there's, what's going to be the best way to do this spanning tree connection. So I should have noticed that because I didn't think about that. But I did see this. I was like, oh, the port 2 entered disabled state, blocking, disabled, blocking. Then it went to listening, learning, and then forwarding. And those are stages of a port when it's going through the spanning tree protocol, because it's basically scanning the network, being like, okay, am I going to run into any loops? And this can be a good thing in very complex, networks with multiple bridges, multiple switches, and stuff like that. But it's not going to be relevant in my particular home network, so I don't want that happening. So we can see right here that there's been some changes, and that BPDU should have given me that indication. And that's okay, again, you're never going to know everything there is to know about Linux, and just because you have to go make a Google search or don't remember something does not make you a lesser Linux user. So, forget those people that say otherwise, but, you're a human being, and most of us don't have eidetic memories. We're not all Sheldon Coopers walking around, so don't sit there and put yourself up at that level, because if you do that, you're just going to set yourself up for failure in the long term. So let's go ahead and clear this out. So remember that command that I was talking about earlier with Network Manager nmcli? That's going to be how we actually manage it. Sudo mcli connection. and then show, and then BR0. And basically what we're doing here is we're just getting some information about the network. Now, about that, I shouldn't say that network, that interface. That interface. So, and then what we can do here is we can just do spanning tree as we can do grep. I'm gonna do tac I because I can't remember if it's uppercase or lowercase. And when you use grep with tac I, it's going to ignore case and it'll just pull up all of them. And look at that. Bridge STP, yes. So we can see that this is indeed up here. Now, I'll show you this without the grep output just real quick, just so you can kind of see it's got tons of information in here about the interface, just tons of stuff. So, you can get information. And I looked in here and, when I was suspecting the DNS, I was looking over here and stuff like that. So, yeah, there's a lot of stuff. There's, 166 different lines here with all sorts of different stuff. So, yeah, you can get more detail that way. Yeah, so we've shown two different ways to get some clues into what may be causing it. And you start and when you're doing this, if you're not sure what something is, just Google it. Ask Google. Be like, yo, Google, like, what's going on here? Like, what is this? And all that stuff. So let's go ahead and clear this out because we want to go ahead and run. We're going to run sudo s nmcli connection, and then I think it was br. Oops. What was the thing? I don't remember. BR0. And then it says STP no. STP no. Let's see here. Let's see, sometimes this is where you'll come in. Let's see here. Second here. I see what's going on here. That is actually not working. So this right here is not working. Well, keep in mind, we're at Fedora 37 or 38. I forget which one we're on now, but this is at 20. So this is a while ago. They do it every 6 months. So we're talking years and years and years ago. So yeah, it's not working, but that's okay. This is part of the process. I'm not going to be over here beating myself up about it. So let's go ahead and close this out. What I'm going to do is I did this in another browser here. That's why I paused the video there for a second so I could go ahead and do another search here just because I didn't want to sit there and do it all in real time. But this was the exact search. It literally took me 2 minutes. As I said, disable spanning tree network manager. And actually, here's that Fedora one that we had. And then the next one I went to was network manager. Red Hat. And this right here, one of the things you'll notice here is that's Red Hat. It says 9.2. 9.2 indicates that, the 9 there is going to give us an indicator that this is probably talking about Red Hat 9, which is going to be the most up to date, which we can actually see here. Well, no, correction is it may do that. It just depends on the version. Sometimes it does that, sometimes it doesn't. But here we're actually with 7. 7 is actually still supported. So this stuff should still work. So let's go ahead and come down here. As I just did a quick search for network manager. For STP, and we found a command here. So we want to go ahead and we're going to run that command instead. So let's go ahead and come in here. I'm going to paste this in here. Whoops, didn't mean to put all that stuff in there. All right, so I don't like it when we do it that way, so we're going to do it that way. We're going to get rid of this. All right, so nm, let's come back over here because I am not root. So, okay, so we're going to put sudo on there. We're going to do nm CLI connection, modify br0 bridge.stp no. So let's go ahead and do that. Perfect. Now that went ahead and took it. So let's go ahead and because you always want to trust but verify anytime you make any kind of configuration changes. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and do that. We're going to do nm, we're going to do sudo nm CLI connection show br0, and then we're going to grep stp. And we can see that there is a no there. So then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to sudo systemctl. And then we're going to do restart network manager. Oops. I am tripping here. There we go. Perfect. And then the next thing that you'd want to do is just test and make sure it works. So yeah, we are good here, and this is more or less in real time. So let's just for giggles, let's just go ahead and run it. Let's do sudo. Let's just do a reboot, and we're gonna give it about. Let's give it there. All right, perfect. Then we're gonna give it just a few. We're gonna give it a few minutes here. Not a few minutes, but a few. Like we're gonna give it about 25, 30 seconds. Because it shouldn't take as long booting it up, and that's it. That is assuming that everything is going to go according to plan here. Connection refused. Connection refused. And it's still not working. Okay, so it looks like it had another hang up, and you can tell here that I've just done tons of different attempts here, but it wasn't that actually did it. It was there was another issue with a program that had timed out, but hadn't quite shut down properly. So it was like, oh, I'm not going to shut down until this is done. And the SSD that it's on my Debian server is on, it's not the fastest thing in the world. So let's give it just a second here. There we go. And pretty quick. It went in a lot faster than it was. It was taking 2 to 3 minutes to do it, and that took about 30 seconds once it actually went done. So yeah, again, the purpose of this video was for me to show you, just going through this process. It's not a clean and clear process, and you're always going to run into hiccups and stuff like that and things you didn't foresee. It's going to take you longer than you anticipated. So, have fun with it. Enjoy it. This is how you learn, is you break stuff, you make mistakes. And that's why in my outro, I always tell you, mistakes make you better, so keep on making them. Do not try for perfection. You will never be perfect. I guarantee you that the more you try to be perfect, the more you're going to set yourself up for failure. You're going to suffer from imposter syndrome and stuff like that. Do not ever try to be perfect. You do not need to be perfect. The only perfect anybody can be is perfectly imperfect. So, all right, guys, I really hope you enjoyed this kind of different format video. If this is something that you'd like me to continue doing in the future, go ahead and let me know down in the comment section below. Make sure you check out this other video from my channel as well. And remember, mistakes make you better, so keep on making them. Thank you so much for watching my video, and have the greatest of days.